Hey everybody, welcome to Craft of the Yeti. A while back I made this tavern as a place to store some of my 3D printed minis. It's much more fun to have them out on display than to keep them in a box somewhere. I wanted to go into this with a plan, so I cut out a piece of dollar store foam core to use as a base and drew in a few things I wanted to add. The first is to have a bar for patrons to enjoy their ale and other beverages. I was also planning on having a stage area so that a bard would have somewhere to perform. I later changed this to some stairs. All of these minis are from Loot Studio's welcome pack, and it also includes a fireplace that I want to include here. Lastly, I'll be adding some doors, one from the outside and one that leads to the kitchen. Oh, and we'll also need some windows. With our plan in place, it's time to start crafting. The first thing is to peel off the paper from the Ready Board foam core. The white version peels off nicely. Dollar Tree also sells a black version that is a little bit harder to peel the paper. With the paper removed, I'm going to practice drawing rocks once again. Since there will be a decent amount of wood in the tavern already, I decided I wanted a stone floor. So I'm going to be practicing drawing rocks once more. To add texture, I'm going to roll a foil ball onto the foam. This adds a variety of indents to make the floor look a little bit more like stone. I have watched more than my fair share of black magic craft videos and decided to cover the floor with Mod Podge mixed with black paint for added durability. I then painted the floor with a gray color, and I mixed a few colors with a bit of gray, and I'm painting some stones here and there with different colors. I then hit the floor with a light dry brush of white, and here is where we can really start to see the texture from the foil ball. Then a black wash made of black acrylic paint and water, and that finishes up the floor. With the floor done, it's time to move on to the walls. I'm cutting them out of XPS foam. They are about 1/4 of an inch thick and maybe 3 inches tall. The exact size here isn't really important. Off camera, I just make sure the scale looks about right with the minis. I connect the 3 walls with hot glue after they have been cut to the appropriate lengths. I'm doing my best to keep them square and removing any excess hot glue. I 3D printed the doors and windows and want to make sure they are in the correct place, so I put the walls up to the floor and press the door into place. This leaves an indent that I can use as a guide to glue the doors in place. I'm using tacky glue here as it will stick quickly and it allows me to keep working, but it also will provide a good solid bond once dried. The interior needs some wood beams to break up the large flat wall sections and add some character. The beams are made of XPS foam. I texture the wood grain into the beams with this sculpting tool my wife found at a craft store. A couple of passes and then rinse and repeat a whole bunch of times. I am once again using the scientific method of this looks like about the right size and cutting the beams with my hobby knife. The beams will then be attached with tacky glue. The floor will be glued to the bottom of the walls, and I want the walls to have baseboards, so I'm dry fitting the floors as I glue the baseboards down. This ensures everything fits where it should. The fireplace I printed has some exposed brick peeking out from behind plaster, so I'm going to mimic this in the XPS foam walls by drawing in bricks with a mechanical pencil. I then use a hobby knife to cut the bricks and also texture them with a foil ball. For the plaster, I'm going to use this tile grout. I had never done anything like this before, so I tested a few different methods. The first was to glue the surface and then dust the glue with grout. That didn't work out very well. The second method was to mix the grout with a little bit of water, making sure it's still a little clumpy. And I liked this much better and decided to use this on the walls. Back to Mod Podge and black paint. For the wood, I am using a Vallejo paint. The bricks were done with a brick red from Apple Barrel, and the plaster walls are based in antique white. Here's how things are shaping up so far. I'm now going to add a brown wash, and this is just watered down brown paint. I cover the plaster with it and then dab off the centers of each section with a paper towel. This makes it look like the edges near the beams are more dirty. Now on to the details. I'm going to make the bar out of XPS foam, and it's going to be in an L shape, so I'm cutting it out with my hot wire table. The bar top will be a little bit wider than the base, so I cut out that size first, then cut off the top, and then I thin out the base. I then glue the top to the base and start texturing. I figured the top would probably be made with 2 pieces of lumber, so I cut the shape and widen it with a pencil. I also wanted to add a knot to one piece, so I'm covering a portion with my thumb and then dodging it with the sculpting tool. I'll then go in and add the knot with a pencil. The sides of the base will be vertical slats that need the wood texture. I then paint to match the rest of the tavern and glue the bar into place. Off camera, I glued the floor to the walls as well. The next thing I'm going to add are some stairs, and these are made with scrap XPS pieces that have been cut to size and textured, and I'm using hot glue to piece this thing together. I also have one of the minis to make sure the stairs look close-ish to scale. Once that's painted up, I added it to our scene with PVA glue, and it didn't want to stay, so I stuck it with some Scotch tape until it dried. Everything else I'm adding was 3D printed and painted off camera. I want these to stay in place, so I'm gluing them down with PVA glue. After everything had dried, I added these shelves to the wall. I 3D printed these and painted them, and then attached them to the walls with super glue. I made these wanted posters in Photoshop. They're of 3 characters I've played in D&D campaigns. I found a rug design on Google and sized it down in Photoshop. In retrospect, it's probably a little bit too dark, but that's okay. I cut these out and covered them with Mod Podge to extend their life and to add some stiffness so that I could shape them a bit later. The rug I glued to some thick card with a glue stick. The card adds some depth to the rug. I painted the sides of the card black off camera as well. I felt like the wanted posters needed some nails to hold them in place, so using pliers, I cut the pokey part of these pins off. The posters will actually be held to the wall with glue. And once those are dried, I added some glue to the pin tips and pressed them into the walls with my pliers. You might also notice that I painted the sides of the diorama black off camera as well. Now I'm going to glue the rug into place near the fireplace. Thinking I was done, I walked away for a bit and came back to the tavern. I do this to see if there's anything else I can add, and at this point I figured the stairs could probably use a rail. With everything done, I can now add my minis and set the scene. I've had this for a couple of years now, and I love being able to switch the scene up. My kids also like to play with the minis and the tavern. Now, on to the good bits. Thanks a ton for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more.